Howdy! Do you run a small business? Maybe you own a jewelry shop, a vintage book or clothes retailer, or you teach music lessons. Maybe you have a dog walking service, own a salon, or a landscape company. Or maybe you don't have a small business, but you've been asked to build a website for someone who does. In this course, I'd like to show you the practical steps needed to build a small business website with WordPress. While WordPress is the tool I'm using in this course, what I most want for you to take away is the process of thinking through what needs to go into your small business site. Together, I'll show you how to plan, what to think about as you create content, and then go through the actual creation of a WordPress site for a small business. The goal of this course is to provide a quick and straightforward way for you to get a small business site online. In order to do that, there are a few things you'll need to follow along with this course. Let's take a look. For starters, we'll be using free software from WordPress.org. Note that there is a hosted platform called WordPress.com, but that's not what we're using for this course. Next, you'll need an account at the web host of your choice. A web host is where your website will live. This is a service you pay for either monthly or annually. And there are more web hosts out there than you can shake a stick at. And while I don't want to take focus away from this course to talk about all the web hosting options out there, I created this blog post for you with more information if you're interested. Next up, you'll need a basic understanding of how WordPress works. If you've never worked with WordPress before, or if you need a refresher, I strongly suggest you check out the WordPress Essential Training course in the library. Finally, you're going to need content for your site. This is the text, the images, any videos you want to show, that sort of thing. So with your web host selected, a basic understanding of how WordPress works, and some content in mind, you're ready for the next step. Many web hosts come with the option to one-click install WordPress. Now, if you choose a managed WordPress host, your account will likely come with WordPress already pre-installed so that you can hit the ground running. In the event you opt for a host that doesn't come pre-installed with WordPress or offer a one-click solution, you'll need to install WordPress yourself. So here are instructions on how to do that directly from WordPress.org. And if you find yourself wanting a more detailed walkthrough on the process, there are a variety of videos in the library to get you going. Just do a search for Install WordPress. In this course, I'll be building an example website for a small veterinary clinic called Wisdom Pet Medicine. This business offers a variety of services for all domestic pets, including the exotic ones. This website is meant to educate both new and existing patients on various topics of pet care and let them know about the range of services available at the clinic. This website hopes to facilitate new patient appointments and demonstrate the quality of care available at the clinic. This example project was created to showcase some common features you'd expect to see on a small business website. And as we move forward in the course, I want you to use your own content and customize what you learn to fit with your small business. When you're ready, let's start at the beginning and build a great small business site with WordPress. Creating a new site can be a fun and exciting process, but it can also become frustrating if you're not clear on your objectives and you find yourself in endless experimentation. To start off strong, you need to identify the purpose of your site. You can find the answer to that by asking yourself the question, why does my business need this website? Maybe you need the website simply to have a professional online presence where customers can find you. That's a straightforward process and one that many small businesses start with. Or maybe the purpose of the website is to sell, educate, build a community, or generate leads. Understanding the purpose of your site will help you as you make decisions regarding the content and features that you want. I'm building a site in this course for a veterinary clinic. The purpose might be to educate our community on how to care for their pets and promote our services. It's not uber specific, but it certainly adds some parameters to what we're trying to accomplish. Once you have your purpose in mind, the next step is to define your goals. To start, think about your business goals. I'm not even talking about your website yet. I'm just talking about the actual goals for your business. They might revolve around financial growth, employee development, customer outreach, or expanding your product or service offerings. Considering your business goals in light of your website's purpose, you can start to identify the goals for your website. Let's say my three primary business goals are to grow new customers by 10% this quarter, add revenue via our new dental care offering, and be the #1 trusted vet clinic in town. So, how could I blend those goals with my site's purpose to determine specific goals for the site? Well, for starters, I want to add a clear call to action on my homepage, inviting new patients to schedule an appointment. I could optionally incentivize them with a coupon for a specific service, and that's a match with my business goals and site purpose. Next, I somehow want to draw attention to the new dental care offering. There are multiple ways I could go about this. I could include an announcement in the header advertising the new service, include a call to action and related blog content, or I could position the new offering at the top of my service list to give it better visibility. Finally, I want to highlight expertise, and I can do that through knowledge sharing on the blog. That supports my purpose of educating the community and also plays into my goal of being a trusted source. I can also demonstrate expertise through testimonials and awards in the footer of my site, which all contribute to my business goals. Once you have your website purpose and goals in mind, you're ready to move to the next step. So far, you've thought through the goals for your website and the kinds of things that you might want to include. You might be thinking, Carrie, let's get on with this. But trust me, we'll start building our site soon. And when we do, you'll be glad that you took the time to do a little planning for your site up front. So we've talked about the site purpose and goals. Now let's talk about how we actually will go about getting them done. These are our requirements. In WordPress, there are 3 basic ways to get things done. First, you can use the features that are already baked into WordPress. Next, if WordPress doesn't have what you need built in, you can find a plugin to do what you need. Think of plugins as modular bits of functionality that you can add to your website. Finally, if you can't find a plugin that meets your needs, you can always build a custom solution or have one built for you. For this course, we'll focus on the first 2, using the features already built into WordPress or finding a plugin that'll do the trick. Based on the site goals we mapped out in the previous lesson, we can now identify requirements for both the content and the presentation of content on the site. This list will help inform our content creation as well as the selection of a theme and supporting plugins. The aim here is to create a guideline to use as we decide how the site should be put together. So for the site I'm building, I've created the following list. First, the site needs to have a professional design that also reflects the nature and attitude of the business. The example project I'm working on, Wisdom Pet Medicine, focuses on medical expertise and warmth and quality of care for pets. And that should be reflected in the design. Next, we need a contact form for patients new and old to get in touch. I also want a way to display testimonials. Now, the next few requirements are best practices for building any small business website with WordPress. The site needs to be mobile responsive so that it can be viewed on all devices, especially phones and tablets. Having a mobile-ready site is no longer a nicety, it's a must. As a matter of fact, Google actively penalizes sites that don't work well on mobile. Next, the site should meet basic accessibility standards. This is a set of best practices that make your site accessible to visitors regardless of what type of device they're using. And a bonus here, accessible sites are fantastic for SEO. Lastly, because the WordPress block editor is the de facto method for creating content in WordPress, we need a theme that's optimized for the block editor. With this requirements list complete, we can combine it with our goals to establish a baseline for content production, theme, and plugin choices. When starting a new website project, I like to create a spreadsheet to use as a site inventory. This is a list of every major item that will go onto the website. What it is, how it's organized in relation to other content, what does it contain, is there anything special to note about it, etc. All of this goes into a spreadsheet. This helps you keep track of everything and note which pieces of content still need to be created or added to the site. Additionally, the inventory will help you think about the architecture of your site. Things like which pieces of content make it to a top-level menu item, and how will visitors navigate to find other content that's not top-level. The inventory should serve your current content needs, but also consider how you might expand areas of content in the future. Think of this as your big picture of what all is going into your site. What you're seeing here is the actual site inventory spreadsheet for this course. I've included a blank copy of this if you'd like to use it as a template for your site. You can download that as part of the exercise files included with this course. Feel free to create your own spreadsheet in the way that makes the most sense for you, or Google around for other templates, whatever suits you. This content inventory will come in handy when you start the practical build of the site, because you now have a list of exactly what you need and where everything goes. Once the inventory is complete, go through each item and build it and all associated content so that everything is ready to go when you start building the site. Now I have all my content written in documents and organized in folders. Organize your content in whatever way makes the most sense for you. If you're collaborating with others on content, maybe you'd like to use a shared service like Google Drive. However you do it, the point is to have a designated place where you're creating your content. This is a step a lot of people skip because it's honestly just not that much fun, but I promise that you will thank yourself for taking the time to do this first. I also just want to point out that when you start a new site, you don't need hundreds or even dozens of pages. Just make an inventory for the core of your site, and then once your site is launched, you can expand gradually. Just remember to keep the inventory in mind so that you keep your structure in check. Before we get into the technical aspects of creating your website, I wanted to spend a minute talking about writing content for your site. Not everyone is a born copywriter. Maybe you love writing, or maybe you absolutely dread it. I'm not sure, but what I can tell you is that a lot of small business owners I've worked with get hung up during the process of writing copy for their sites. Your content is a direct reflection of your business. Unfortunately, you may only get one shot to attract a customer, and if the quality of your writing is poor, that can reflect poorly on your business. In this lesson, I'd like to talk about a few ways to make your life easier as you set about creating copy for your small business website. Even if copywriting is not your thing, these will get you started in the right direction. First, start by thinking about what it is that you want to communicate. What's the point you're trying to make? Jot down a title that sums it up, and then write a paragraph or two to let the reader know what your main point is and what they can expect to learn from reading the rest of the page or article. Next up, create a simple outline. Think of a few supporting points that communicate your main idea and make those your headings. After that, go back and fill in a paragraph or two under each heading that provides additional detail. Of course, don't forget a conclusion or summary at the end. Not everything you write has to follow this structure, but I find that it's a good starting point for thinking about how you want to communicate an idea. It's actually the same technique I use when I'm planning courses just like this one. After you've made a first or second pass at writing, don't forget to use a spell check. I've yet to see a modern word processor that doesn't include a spell check feature. Use it. Or if you're writing directly in the WordPress editor versus using a word processor, no worries. The WordPress editor has spell check automatically baked in. Finally, never underestimate the power of another set of eyes. Ask someone whose communication skills you appreciate to proofread your copy and make suggestions or edits. Or if you don't know anyone, use an automated writing assistant like Grammarly to clean up your copy. With just these simple steps, you'll be well on your way to writing content for your website. If you want to hone your skills further, images play a very important role in your website. They add visual interest and impact to your text and can help give customers a better understanding of the work that your company does or the products or services that you provide. Just like writing content from scratch, I know it can be overwhelming to think about sourcing quality imagery for your site. I'd recommend that you use a combination of your own photography, preferably taken by a professional, and maybe mix in a little bit of stock photography. When it comes to stock photography, or basically any imagery that you'd like to use that you didn't create, you always want to make sure that those images are licensed for commercial use. For example, you can't go to Google Images, find a picture you like, and just use it. That can get you into trouble. There are plenty of paid stock image sites online where you can purchase royalty-free images for use, such as Adobe Stock, Getty Images, or Deposit Photos, just to name a handful. If you don't have a budget for stock images, there are some great free options too. Some of my favorites include Pexels, Openverse, which used to be called Creative Commons, or Unsplash. Stock imagery is great if you're looking for backgrounds or something to serve as a backdrop to portions of your content. Now, when it comes to stock photos of people, I'd suggest you steer clear. Most people can spot a stock photo from a mile away, and as a small business, that can come across as very disingenuous. Whenever possible, use photos of your actual employees and customers, or at least people who look like your employees and customers. This will give a much warmer impression to your site visitors than pictures of happy, smiling fake people. My final word of advice is to only use images that add impact to your site. Don't use an image just because you can. Use it because it specifically enhances your content and adds meaning or context to your site. Images are powerful. Use them wisely. Whether you snap your own photos or hire someone else to do it, here are some things to keep in mind as you work with images. First, take high-resolution photos. While you'll ultimately scale them down and compress them for use on your site, start with high-res images. You can always make a large image smaller, but you'll never be able to make a small image larger and still have it look good. Next, consider taking photos where you have a good, even light source, and avoid taking photos where there are distracting elements in the background or things that would otherwise take away from whatever you're trying to show off in the photo. Along those lines, if you're shooting photos of your products, try to shoot each product from a similar angle and with a similar backdrop. For small products, a basic light box or a white background may work great. For larger products, this might present a bigger challenge, but just imagine if all of your images were shown on a page in a square grid format. Think of maybe a product search result on Amazon where you see all the products listed in a grid. Now, if you saw your products listed that way, would they look consistent across the board or like a hodgepodge of backgrounds and locations? Go for consistency. The same thing applies if you're taking photos of your employees or team members. Try not to mix professional headshots of some people with candid photos of others, for example. Next, let's talk about optimizing your images for the web. Image file sizes play a big role in how fast your site loads. Your goal is to strike the balance that gets you the highest quality image at the smallest possible file size. First, scale down or crop the image to roughly match the size you want it to be on your website. Experiment with the image format that gets you the best looking image at the smallest file size. For example, does saving as a PNG get you a better result than saving as a GIF or a JPEG? Whether you're using a graphics program like Photoshop or an image optimization plugin such as Smushit, be sure to compress your images for the best results. You may also consider using a CDN or a content delivery network for serving static assets such as images from your site. Now, when it comes to adding the image to your site, here are a few things to consider. Before uploading an image to your site, be thoughtful about the file name and name your images accordingly. For example, if I'm uploading a photo of myself to my About page, I'll name the photo carrydills.jpg, not whatever random name or numbers my camera assigns to it. When you upload an image to your site's media library, you have the opportunity to add alt text or alternative text. Imagine that you had to describe the image to someone who couldn't see the image. That's your alt text. It may appear to site visitors before your image is fully loaded. It can appear when hovering a mouse over an image, and it also serves to provide a meaningful description to non-visual users. While search engines do indeed take note of file names and alt text for that matter, this is not an opportunity to keyword stuff. Lastly, you can add captions to your images if you'd like. These typically display directly below the image. From taking photos to optimizing images to using them, you now have a few guidelines to help you maximize the impact of images on your site. The WordPress editing experience has changed significantly in recent years. If you've been working with WordPress for a while, you know that the classic editor, which operated similarly to a word processor, has been replaced by the block editor, also known as Gutenberg. Since the block editor was introduced in late 2018, we've used blocks to create and lay out pages and posts. Paragraph blocks, image blocks, row blocks, column blocks. This is how we create content. Now, take this concept a step further and imagine using blocks to create things outside of the content area. things like your site header or site footer, essentially using blocks to create your entire site. It's called full site editing. Using full site editing requires a special type of theme that supports these features, and these are called block themes. Now, when you're using a block theme, you get access to something called the site editor. Let me show you. So if I head to my WordPress dashboard and go to Appearance, Themes, right now I've got the 2020 theme active. I'm going to activate 2022, which is a block theme. And here under my Appearance menu, I now get this editor. Now, at the time of this recording, this is still in beta, and it's indicated by this beta label here. Allow me to be honest and a little bit opinionated here. Full site editing is really cool in concept. I like the way this is heading. However, it's obviously still in beta, and some would argue that it shouldn't even be in WordPress yet until it's further along in development. Because it's so new, there's still a lot of fluctuation. It's quite literally evolving by the day. So I'm hesitating to show a lot of screenshots here because they'd probably be outdated pretty quickly anyway. What does this mean for you as a WordPress user and website owner? Well, there's a steep learning curve with full site editing, and unless you just love being on the bleeding edge, I'd recommend giving this feature a little more time to bake. In the meantime, instead of block themes, consider block-based themes. These are themes that are optimized for the block editor but are not built for full site editing. We'll look at some examples of block-based themes later in the course. So while I'm not going to teach you about full site editing in this course, I wanted to mention it as something that you may run into as you work with WordPress. If you're really interested in a more in-depth look, check out this course in the library. Themes allow us to change the appearance and display of the public-facing content of our WordPress site. Want your site to look a certain way? Find a theme that matches your needs or build one yourself. The great thing about using WordPress to build websites is that there are so many themes available, pretty much one for every conceivable need. But the sheer volume of available themes also makes it hard to navigate the landscape, let alone find the exact theme that's right for you. Allow me to give you some tips for making the search more manageable. Jot down a list of requirements and preferences before you search. This will help you narrow down your options. Next, know where to search. There are thousands of themes out there, and not all of them are published by reputable sources. I'll share some good ones here shortly. Realize there's a chance that your ideal theme doesn't exist. You'd have to be willing in this case to either compromise or spend the time and money it takes to build a custom theme that's unique to you. Next, check out the documentation. Most themes allow for a great deal of customization, but you have to know how to use it to get the most out of it. And if you find a theme without good documentation, ditch it, or you'll end up frustrated trying to set it up. Lastly, check out your support options. Many free themes don't come with guaranteed support. That doesn't mean that you can't use a free theme, just understand what you're going to get in terms of support. And if you opt for a paid theme, make sure you do have access to support in case you need it. For our project, the requirements have already been clearly defined. We want a professional and warm design that reflects the personality of the brand. I don't want anything too sterile looking. The theme needs to be highly customizable, and I want a theme that comes with starter templates. More on this in a second. I want a block-based theme, and it needs to meet the base requirements of being accessible, responsive, and optimized for speed. Our next step is knowing where to look. While there are lots of places to source themes online, the easiest place to start is the WordPress theme directory. You can access the WordPress theme directory on the web at wordpress.org/themes, or you can access it from right within the admin panel of your WordPress site. From here, you can filter based on popularity, themes added lately, or by feature. And then if you see a theme that you think looks promising, you can click on it to get more info. You can also click to see a preview, but honestly, this makes most themes look a little boring since the preview shows just the base theme without any setup. For that reason, I prefer to visit the theme homepage. If you're on WordPress.org looking at themes, you can download the one you like and then later upload it to your site. Or if you're working from the WordPress admin area of your site, you can directly search for and install a theme from the directory there. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. In addition to the WordPress theme directory, you can also get premium pay-for themes from theme shops all over the web. Premium themes I trust come from StudioPress, BizBudding, and ThemeIsle, just to name a few. Based on the requirements that we set out for this site, I went searching for themes on WordPress.org to see what themes could work well for a small business site. I'd like to show you the 3 that I think could work well for this course and possibly for your site. All are mobile responsive, optimized for the block editor, performant, and meet accessibility guidelines. That means they're coded in a way that gives site visitors a good experience, regardless of the device they're using to interact with your site. There is one thing I would like you to keep in mind as we look at each of these themes. Even though I'm building a small business site, none of these themes is demoed for that style of site. But nonetheless, any one of these could work for a small business. Now, the first one I want to show you is Astra. This is a lightweight, fast-loading theme that's fully responsive. If we go to the theme's homepage, I'll show you another thing I like about Astra, and it's that it's got these starter templates. These are templates that you can drop directly into your site and customize, so it's kind of like giving you a head start. While there are starter templates for various page builder plugins like Elementor or Beaver Builder, there are also starter templates available for the default WordPress block editor, also known as Gutenberg. Astra is totally free to use, but know that there's a paid plugin option that brings you additional features. The next theme I'd like to show you is Neve by ThemeIsle. This is extremely flexible, though I think it's a little more difficult to set up due to the number of customization options. Like Astra, there's a free version and a paid upgrade. It also features starter sites, which is so cool. Thanks to the block editor, you could take these starter templates and drop them right into your site, giving you a massive head start on the site creation process. I'd encourage you to preview the starter sites and see if you think there's any that might work for your business. The third theme I selected as a possibility is GeneratePress. While this is a free theme, there are premium features available like we've already seen with the other 2 themes. GeneratePress also has a site library or starter templates, but they're only available with the paid plan. If we preview one of their templates, we can also see how things look on mobile devices, the tablet and the phone, for example. And that's really handy. So that's 3 themes for us. We've got GeneratePress, Neve, and Astra. In the last movie, we looked at a few themes that would all work well for a small business site. Now it's time to pick the one we'll use for this project. And who's the winner? I picked Astra. Note that I'm only using free tooling for this course, but this theme, along with the other themes I mentioned, they are well worth the upgrade price if it helps you build your site faster. So now that I picked my theme, it's time to get a copy of the theme and install it on my site. Now, I could download it right here from WordPress and then upload it from my WordPress site, but there's an easier way. Any theme from the .org theme directory here can be accessed from within the WordPress admin. So if we go back to our admin, and here we are under Appearance Themes, I can click Add New, search for Astra, and click Install. And we'll go ahead and activate it. So from here, I could go view my site and see we are using the Astra theme. There's not much here to look at yet, and that's because I haven't added any content to my site. I only have the default post and pages that came with WordPress. Now headed back to my themes, and I'm going to click on Theme Details for Astra, and I can see the version I'm using here is 3.8.1. And that's the newest version available at the time of this recording. If you want to follow along with me exactly through the rest of the course, you can also use the latest version of this theme. Or if you've selected a different theme to use, that's totally fine. You'll just want to refer to that theme's setup documentation. Before we start configuring this theme, I want to highlight that when we installed it and activate it, we got this new option here under the Appearance menu called Astra Options. And this is sort of the home base for all the customization options for Astra. We've got an invitation to try starter templates. We'll do that in another lesson. And we get the links to the customizer and then our options available with the Astra Pro plugin. And that's a premium upgrade. So here, these links to the customizer settings, you could click on any one of these, or you could simply navigate to the Customize menu. They both take you to the same place. Even if you're not using Astra for your site, you'll most likely have access to this customizer, and you'll see your theme customization options here. Now, some of these options are universal to any theme, such as site identity, menus, widgets, etc. And then some of these are going to be unique to the actual theme that you've got installed. Let's start out with a customization here. Now, I could go to this header builder and click Site Title and Logo. Or if I back out, let's see, I can go to Site Identity and also be taken to a place where I can manage my site title and logo. Again, there's just a couple of ways of getting to the same customization pages. So let's start with a logo. I'll just click Select, and this brings up my media library. And so far, I have absolutely nothing in there, but I'm going to upload a file from my hard drive. I'll select one. And I'm going to add some alt text. And click Select. Now here I've got an invitation to crop this image to particular dimensions, but I already cropped my image before uploading it, so I'm just going to say skip cropping. And there, in real time, we can see our logo added to the site. Now here I also get the option to modify the size. Let's leave it there. And I have some options for whether or not I want to display the site title, which I'm going to go ahead and do, and the site tagline. Now here I've got the default just another WordPress site tagline, which I definitely don't want. So I'm going to pop over to my content inventory, grab my site tagline, and paste that in there. Perfect. Now, the last bit of my customization here, I'm going to upload a site icon. And this is what shows in the browser tab up here, where we've currently got this little WordPress logo. So I'll click Site Icon. Again, this is going to take me to my media library, and I'm going to upload a separate file for this. I'll skip cropping. And then we can see our little site icon up there. Very cool. As a reminder, anytime you make changes in the customizer, you're seeing a live preview, but this is not saved on your site until you press Published, so don't forget to do that. All right, we've taken our first steps to customize our site. Join me in the next lesson as we explore more customization options. At this point, you've done the hard work of creating content. You've also explored some themes and landed on the one that you'd like to use. I won't go so far as to say the rest of the process is downhill, but I will say that this is where things start to really come together visually. Now, earlier, we left off in the theme customizer after adding a logo and a site icon. Let's see what else we can do. So we'll start under this Global tab. Here we get global or site-wide settings for typography, colors, etc. Let's start with typography, and this is where we can set the font options for the site. Now, by default, we could use system fonts or Google Fonts. You can also specify the size and the weight, etc. You may already have a font in mind that you want to use, maybe something that matches a font used in your logo. If you don't have a particular font in mind, I'd suggest starting with some of these Astra theme presets. By hovering over each one, you can see which fonts are being paired. And by clicking one, you can actually preview it on the site there. Now, typography is definitely a personal choice, so I'm going to leave you to pick fonts, but here are a few things to keep in mind. The font you select should fit your brand. Readability is critical, so I'd suggest steering clear of handwriting fonts or anything too cutesy. Finally, for each different font family you use and for each individual font weight that you select, you're increasing load time on your site. So don't go too crazy there. My recommendation is to stick to a maximum of 2 font families and maybe 3 font weights. I'm not going to select any fonts at this point because I'm planning on using a starter template a little later, and that will include font selections. Going back to our global settings, next up we have colors. This is where you can set a custom color palette. Again, I'm going to hold off on that for the moment because when I add a starter template, that would override any of these customizations, and I don't want to do that. Also here, we have settings for our container, which include the container width and how we want our layout to look. And we get some additional options for global styles for buttons and spacing on the block editor. Beyond that, Astra gives us quite a few customization options. I know you may be working with a different theme, so I'm not going to linger too long on Astra-specific options, but this should give you enough of an overview of how the customizer works and what sort of options you'll find here. As we move through the course, we'll be working with this customizer some more. As the block editor has matured, more and more themes are adding starter templates. I'm in love with starter templates as it takes away the burden from designing a site from scratch. In this lesson, we'll explore some of the starter templates available with Astra and look at how to use them. So to start, I'm going to go back to my site and from the Appearance menu, head to Astra Options. Now, under this Starter Templates section, there's an option to install the importer plugin. I'm going to go ahead and go through that process. And this brings us to an introductory screen. You're welcome to pause this lesson if you want to hear the intro here. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on with this Build Your Website button. Next, I'm asked to select which page builder I'm using. I'm using Gutenberg or the block editor for this course, so I'll click that. And it looked like something went wrong here. My templates aren't loading, so I'm going to go ahead and reload this page. Oh, there we go. Here I can browse templates by category or search term. Because these templates are fully customizable once you import them, you're not limited to using one that's specific to your industry. Use any one that you like the looks of. If one catches your eye, you can click on it, and that brings up a screen where you could either start the import process or just click through and check out the templates involved. So like this is the home page template, an about page template, services, etc. Now, even though you don't have to find a starter template that's in your industry, I did happen to find one that's already ready for pets, and I actually like the design. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. So once you've settled on one you like, you can start the build process. Now, even though we already uploaded a logo via the customizer, it's giving me an option to upload and preview my own logo here. I'll go ahead and do that again. I'll say continue. And from here, I could change my default color palette. See how that looks if I just click some of these. And you can also change the font for this template as well. I'm going to go ahead and pick a color scheme that closely matches my brand. I can go back and tweak those colors later. And let's see which one of these fonts I want to use. I like that one. I'll click continue. And from here, we get a screen asking us for a little bit of contact info. Big secret, you don't actually have to fill this out unless you just want to receive newsletters from Astra. And then here we get these advanced options to import the customizer settings, import widgets, import demo content, and whether or not we want to share non-sensitive data with the developers of these templates. I'm going to go ahead and leave all of these options checked and say build my website. Hooray! In no time flat, well, I guess 19 seconds to be exact, this has gone in and built out my website to look like that demo. Let's take a look. There we are. So if we head back to our admin and go to pages, I can see that this actually imported some demo content. It also looks like it installed the WP Forms plugin for me. And while it's a great plugin, it's not the one I actually use. So here are plugins. I'm going to say deactivate and delete. And peek behind the scenes, you see the WP Reset plugin that I've used just for the development of this course to help me keep everything clean that I'm showing you here. If you started down the road of customizing your website and wanted to take it back to its default state, you too could use this WP Reset plugin to do that. From here, we can also see the Starter Templates plugin, and I'm going to leave that active for now. Now, just in case you want to experiment with more than one template, I want to point out something to you. So let's go to the library again. And this time we'll pick out a different site. Hotel and travel. Great. I'll click that. We'll say skip and continue. Skip and continue. And once we get back here, we've got a new option, and that's to delete previously imported sites. So leaving that option selected will delete all the data from the previous import. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here, go back to my dashboard. So going back to pages here, several of these were added as part of my previous template import. If you've already gone in and edited one of these pages and don't want to lose that, then if you opt to try a new template, be sure to uncheck that option we just looked at so that previously imported site data isn't removed. Just a heads up. When we added the starter templates, some new posts and new pages were added for us. In this lesson, I'd like to specifically look at the home page, and we're going to do two things. I want to show you how to edit the template using the block editor to match your own content, and I want to show you how to set a front page for your WordPress site. So to start, you can see that by our home page here, it says front page. Now, when we installed the templates, it changed this setting for us. But in case you're following along with a theme or template that doesn't do this, I want to show you how you can do this. In WordPress, you can designate any page to be your home page. It doesn't matter whether it's called home or not. And you can do this by going to Settings, Reading, make sure that this a static page is selected, and then from Home Page, you get a list of all available pages and select the one that you'd like to use. You can access the same setting via the customizer by going to Appearance, Customize, and Home Page Settings. Now that we've confirmed our page is set, let's go ahead and edit that home page. Here we get this welcome to the block editor. I'm just going to dismiss that. And now we're in the familiar, or hopefully familiar, block editor interface where we can go in and change any of these blocks to match what we want. I'm going to start by putting a different image here. And right now we've got this fixed background effect, but I can unselect that. There we go. And let's put a little color overlay on this. You can make this darker or lighter, and really what you just want to keep in mind here is that if you have text overlaid on an image, you want to make sure that that text is nice and readable. So I'm going to go back to my content inventory and take my site tagline and use it right here. There we go. And let's change this button. We'll say schedule an appointment. And then we can link that to the contact page that was automatically created for us with the template. Okay, so that's looking good. All right, next up on this section, let's change out this header. And in case you need a refresher on working with the block editor, you can insert new blocks by using the plus indicator, or you can just type right into an existing block and edit it directly there. And then over on the right, using this gear icon, you can open up the settings for each individual block. And we can even delete blocks that we don't want. So really, this is completely flexible. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these numbers, for instance. just click into those, remove the heading, and let's change these titles to match our services. Let's see, we'll call this recent post tips for healthy and happy pets. And here we've got a newsletter subscription. This is a feature you may want for your site. It's not one that I want for mine, so I'm going to delete it. And I'll just select that and click remove. And it looks like I haven't completely removed this. And sometimes when you're working with the block editor, it's a little hard to see exactly what you've got selected. So pro tip here, I love using this list view to open up and see exactly what we're working with. So in this case, if I click here, it highlights the block I'm working with, and I want to take that entire group and remove it. There we go. And this group of happy readers, that's some testimonials, I'll move these above the blog post. And just an example here, we can replace these photos. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and click update and see what this looks like. Okay, so there in just a few minutes, we were able to take the starter template that we had and modify it with some of our own photos and text. So obviously you'll want to do what makes the most sense for your business, but I simply wanted to point out that using a starter template is a great way to get a head start. And from there, you can go ahead and edit to meet your needs. With that, we've got a solid looking homepage and it's time to move on. Earlier, we took a quick tour of the theme customizer. And now that we've got our starter templates added, let's go back and make sure that settings are a match for our brand. So I'm going to start by clicking the customize link here to open the customizer up. And it looks like I have an autosave. I'm just going to go ahead and dismiss that. And I'll click on global. First, I'm going to double check that the font styles are what I want. So I'm actually going to switch to a preset that uses all sans serif fonts. And note that while you're in the customizer, you can still navigate around your site to see what individual pages would look like with your font selections. All right, I'm happy with that. Moving on, I want to look at my colors. Even though the template color palette is close to my brand, it's not quite there. So I'm going to make some updates. I've got my color hex codes stored in my content inventory. So I'm going to start there. Okay, so I've updated my global palette. And unless you've gone and set colors on specific items, for instance, maybe this button and the header, if we click to edit that, that takes us to our customizer settings for the button. And under design, I have the option to set a custom color there. So if you'd already done that and you wanted to revert it back to the global style palette, you could just click this little reset button and it would take you back to the colors that are part of your global palette indicated by that globe icon. Now these are Astra specific features, but you may find something similar in your theme. So let's go back to our home page. All right, we see our colors updated. Fantastic. So far, I'm happy with my edits, so I'm going to go ahead and click Publish. Before the block editor came along, WordPress gave us widgets to use in our headers, footers, and sidebars. These widgets were for things like inserting a recent post list, a search box, that sort of thing. And widget areas were hard-coded into themes as designated spots where you could place said widgets. So at this point, widgets have been replaced by blocks. So instead of a recent post widget, for example, we have a recent post block. Because WordPress themes are still in a transitional space, I wanted to share that information with you so that if you see the word widget or widget areas when working with a theme, you'll know what that means. So in this lesson, I'd like to take a look at customizing the header, footer, and a sidebar for our site. From the customizer, let's start with our header builder. Here we've got 3 rows where we can basically drag and drop blocks to arrange them how we want. And I'm actually going to leave the logo there, but just wanted to show you how the drag and drop works. And in this top area above that, I'm going to add, say, widget 1. And now that we've got a widget here, we can click to add the block that we want in this space. And in this case, I'm going to select a paragraph block. And I'll add a little call to action to schedule a new appointment. From here, I can go to the design settings, and let's say that we want the actual content. Okay, that's a nice light color, but I need a background color. So if I open up the settings for this and say design, here we go, we can set a background color, and now we can see our text up there. And let's add a little padding here to the top just to make that centered. And oops, I don't want padding on all sides, so I'll uncheck that and we'll make each of those 0. Perfect. All right, now that I've got my header looking like I want it, let's go back and go to the footer builder. In this case, I want to get rid of this entire area right here. So I could either click delete from this or go to this widget and just click X to remove it from the grid. I'll leave the rest as is, but you get the idea of how you could click into these and edit the content as well as edit the design in terms of font size, that sort of thing. One last thing I want to do, and that's add a sidebar to my blog. So I'm going to navigate to a single blog post. And here you can see I've got a full width layout. There is no sidebar. So if I go back to my customizer, click on sidebar, and for my blog post, let's add a right sidebar. There we go. It looks like it's already populated with some blocks here, so I could edit these or delete them or add new ones. So for instance, let's go ahead, click on the pencil icon, and remove the archives. I like the categories. Let's move that to the top of my sidebar. And actually, let's add a search block above that. So you can see we're still working with blocks here. It's just in the context of a widget area versus this main content area. Now, if you're using a different theme, these layout and design controls will look a little different, but regardless of the theme, when you're in the customizer mode here, anytime you see the pencil icon, you can click that and it'll take you to the right spot in the customizer to edit that area. That part's universal. We've still got more territory to cover when it comes to setting up our site, but at this point, you should feel comfortable navigating around the customizer to get the overall styles, layout, and settings that you want for your site. Let's talk a bit about plugins. Plugins are small applications that literally plug into WordPress to add new features and functionality to your site. Some might even help you integrate with third-party software, such as an email marketing app or a social media platform. Just like themes, there's a lot of plugins out there to choose from. For instance, in the WordPress.org plugin directory alone, there are over 59,000 plugins. If you turn to Google for your plugin search, you'll turn up even more free and paid or premium plugins. Like themes, plugins can come from reputable sources or not. They also play a role in the performance of your website. This means that as a WordPress user, you need to be pretty savvy about how to pick your plugins. At WordPress meetups and WordCamps, one of the most frequent questions I hear from DIY WordPress users is, how do I know which plugins I should use? Well, in the rest of this video, I'll give you some tips for selecting and installing plugins. I like to search for plugins from directly within my WordPress admin. You can do the same by going to your WordPress site, going to the admin area, and then clicking on this plugins link. From there, we'll say Add New. Here you get a list of all the available plugins from the WordPress.org plugin directory. In order for a plugin to even get a listing on WordPress, it has to be vetted by a team to make sure it meets certain requirements. So my first piece of advice is to stick to plugins that you discover here. For each plugin, we get a quick overview, including the name, how many active installs there are, and when the plugin was last updated. One of the things you may encounter is outdated plugins. The nature of open source is that a plugin author might create a plugin, but then abandon it for various reasons. My rule of thumb is to steer clear of any plugin that hasn't had an update in the past year, unless you just trust a plugin author and know that their code still works and is up to date. If a plugin is receiving regular updates, you know that it's under active development, more likely to be secure, and is taking advantage of the latest that WordPress has to offer. You'll also want to pay attention to the rating of a plugin. Generally speaking, if there's a large number of active installs and the plugin gets a high star rating, those are good signs. So based on all this information, I can install whatever plugin I want into my site and then test it out to see if it works. Now here's a tip. When you install a new plugin, check your site after each one to see that things work the way they're supposed to and look all right. Most of the time when you add a new plugin, you're just adding functionality to your site and everything will work just fine. But every once in a while, you might add a plugin that either conflicts with another plugin or causes some other problems. So don't be surprised if you occasionally come across one that doesn't play nicely with your site. If you stick to installing and checking plugins one by one, you'll find out quickly if there's a problem, and you can simply uninstall that plugin and find an alternative. One other note. A lot of times, plugins will add admin notices to this page, and they can kind of clutter up and get annoying over time, especially if you get a lot of them. So feel free to read whatever message is from the plugin author and then just dismiss the notification if it doesn't apply. Now, when it comes to installing any plugin, all you have to do is click that Install Now button and then activate the plugin. So now that you know where to find plugins and a few basics of what to look for, let's look at some plugins I've selected to help with this site. In the previous lesson, we looked at some tips for vetting plugins in the WordPress repository based on how recently updated the plugin was, how many ratings it gets, and the number of installs. While those aren't the only factors to consider, those are quick ways to determine if a plugin is even worth looking at further. Similar to themes, you'll find a lot of free plugins in the WordPress repository that have paid upgrades. That's a good thing, and that you don't have to go searching all over the web. Even if there's a great paid plugin out there, you could discover it by finding the free version here first. Let's head back to our site. And I'm going to go to Plugins, Add New, and do a search for Forms. Now this returns a ton of results. So in addition to the criteria we already looked at, we could further narrow this down by just quickly scanning through the descriptions and finding out whether a plugin even meets our needs or not. For example, if we want a simple contact form, we probably don't need the user registration plugin. You can also click through a plugin to get more information. For instance, here's Ninja Forms. And if we scroll down, we can see that this is one of those plugins with a paid upgrade. Generally, when there's a free and paid version of a plugin, the free plugin offers basic features, while the paid version offers more advanced features. Also, paying for a plugin may give you access to faster support. This is very similar to how themes operate. If you think you found a plugin that meets your requirements, you could further vet it by searching for reviews and tutorials on Google or YouTube. That'll give you a feel for how easy, or not, it is to work with a particular plugin. Now, I'm sort of a click first, ask questions later kind of gal, so I'll frequently just install a plugin just to see how it works, and then if I don't like it, I'll deactivate it and delete it. Of course, if your site is already live, I'd strongly caution you to experiment on a staging version of your site, just in case anything goes wrong. So to recap here, Use the WordPress.org plugin repository to start your search. Once you've narrowed down some options, use Google or YouTube to search for tutorials and reviews. You can always take a plugin for a spin by installing and activating it on your site. Though if you opt not to use it, be sure to deactivate it and delete it so that you're not cluttering up your site. Lastly, don't be afraid to ask the larger WordPress community for opinions. You can do this in person via local WordPress meetups or conferences, or online via social media. There are a lot of WordPress user groups out there that you could tap into. Let's take a look at some of the plugins I've selected to help us achieve our site goals. First, we need a contact form so that site visitors can get in touch. I've picked the Ninja Forms plugin to help us. Now, there are a lot of plugins out there for forms, but the reason I selected this one for a small business site is this. It's easy to use, it has some really powerful capabilities, and down the road, should you ever need additional form functionality, Ninja Forms integrates with quite a few third-party tools like PayPal and MailChimp. Next, I've selected Spectra, a block library plugin. While WordPress comes with a lot of blocks, you may find yourself wanting more advanced blocks or something really specific like an accordion block or tabs. There are lots of block library plugins out there, but Spectra is developed by the same team that created the Astra theme I'm using, so I know the integration will be solid. Finally, we have Regenerate Thumbnails plugin. I use this plugin on just about every site that I work on. It allows you to regenerate the thumbnails for your media images, which is super helpful if you've updated your media image sizes through Settings, Media, or installed a new theme after you've added featured images to your content. Each theme dictates the size of a featured image. So if you uploaded images before you installed the theme you're currently working with, those featured image sizes are probably different. Using Regenerate Thumbnails will just help me make sure that all of my thumbnail images are correctly sized for Astra. To use the plugin, make sure that you've got it installed and activated, so we'll go do that now. And once that's done, I can go to Tools, Regenerate Thumbnails, and Regenerate All Thumbnails. And now that I'm done using this plugin, I'm going to go ahead and deactivate it and delete it. There's no reason to keep a plugin around that's not being used. So that's it for Regenerate Thumbnails. Later in this course, I'll install some utility plugins, but this is enough to get us going for now. In this lesson, we're going to get our About page squared away. As a small business, this is a really important page for your site. Now earlier, the starter templates I imported came with an About page. If you don't have one, you can just go to Add New and create a new page. Otherwise, if you already have one and want to just edit it like I am, you can just click the Edit button. Now in my case, the About page is titled About Me, which isn't appropriate for a vet clinic. So I'm going to just delete the Me part. And if I go over to my permalink, I can see that the slug is About-Me. Now, if you're not seeing this, just make sure to toggle on this gear icon and make sure you're on the Page tab. I'm going to go ahead and update the slug to just say About. Note that if you ever change a slug on a live site, you'll want to consider 301 redirects. Otherwise, if someone tries to visit the old slug, there won't be anything there. Earlier, I mentioned the Spectra block library plugin that I wanted to use on this site, and I'm going to go ahead and install that now so that I can use one of those blocks on my About page. I'll head to Plugins, Add New, and type in Spectra. We'll install and activate it. Now, in case you're confused about why we installed and activated a plugin named Spectra, but now we're seeing something called Ultimate Add-ons for Gutenberg, that's because this plugin just changed its name recently to Spectra, and obviously not all the things are updated yet. But Ultimate Add-ons for Gutenberg and Spectra are the same thing. So let's head back to our About page. And I'll say that I want to insert a block here. And that brings up this block inserter panel. And if I click Browse All, that opens up the full list of available blocks. Now, if I scroll down, here I can see the blocks that were added by Spectra, aka Ultimate Add-ons. Now, the block that I wanted to add for this page is the content timeline. I think this is pretty cool, especially for a small business. Of course, you can edit all of this text and all of the background colors, etc., just like you would any other block. There's one other thing that I want to show you that might come in handy on your About page. So we know that the Astra theme came with templates. Part of that includes something called patterns, which are pre-configured groups of blocks. You can search by category, and if I head down to Team, I can see various patterns of blocks that highlight team members. I'm going to pick one that I like and click Import. And just like that, I've added it to my page. Let's take a look. Now, obviously, you would want to go in here and update the photos and the text to match your business, but just wanted to show you some really quick ways that you can use either patterns or block libraries in addition to core WordPress blocks to build out a page for your site. In this lesson, we're going to create a contact page. I'm going to be creating a page from scratch, so I'll click Add New and give it a title of Contact. If we go back to the Astra templates and look at patterns for a contact page, we can see that there are quite a few. And I'm going to go ahead and drop one in that works for my site. Now, notice this alert box here. This particular pattern uses the WP Forms plugin, which you may remember that I deleted earlier in this course. But if I save that draft of a page and head back to my WordPress admin, I can see that WP Forms was installed when I imported that particular pattern. Astra was trying to make things easy for us, but it would have been nice to have the option to install the plugin or not. But alas, we can't have everything. I'm going to deactivate and delete that plugin. And I actually want to use the Ninja Forms plugin. So I'm going to head over here, do a search for Ninja Forms. Install and activate. So once Ninja Forms is activated, you'll see a new menu item over here for Ninja Forms. Now I've got a pop-up that's asking if they can collect data about how Ninja Forms is used to help improve the experience. And let's see, the data will not include any submission data or personally identifiable information. So yeah, I agree to that, but I don't want your emails. So from this menu, we can see all the forms that we have. We can add new forms, see form submissions. We can import or export form data. We have settings for the plugin, a section for getting help if you need support, and add-ons. Add-ons is where you can browse the additional paid upgrades for Ninja Forms. Now, if we head back to our dashboard, you'll see a Contact Me form already installed. That just came with the plugin. I'm going to delete that and start from scratch. So I'll click Add New, and this gives us several templates that we can use as a starting point. I'll click Contact Us. And here it starts us off with 3 fields, a name, email, and a message. But we can add more fields by clicking this plus button. So in the case of my vet clinic, I might want to add a drop-down list of services. Do that by clicking Select, drag it up here, and if I click on it, I can change the label to say, select the service you're interested in. And I'll just add a few. And maybe I want to ask if they are a new or existing patient. And I can drag and drop to rearrange these. Now, you don't want to make your contact form annoyingly long or people won't fill it out, but do use this opportunity to collect any data points that would help you better serve your customer when you respond. I'm going to go ahead and update the label on this message to say, how can we help? And notice that you can toggle on or off whether a field is required. I'm going to update the text on the submit button just to say send, and I think that will do it. So once we've got the contact form fields we want, the next thing we want to do is to make sure that when this form is submitted, something actually happens, like it goes somewhere. So I'll click Emails and Actions. And our first one here is to record the submission. This basically says, do we want to store the submitted form information here on the WordPress site? I say yes, so I'm going to leave that clicked. Secondly, we've got an email confirmation. This would go out to the person who submitted the form. In this case, I don't really need to send an email confirmation, so I'm just going to toggle that off. Next, we have email notification. Think of this as your admin notification. This is the email that goes to you, letting you know that a customer is trying to get in touch. By default, this is going to go to whoever is listed as the admin on this WordPress site under your settings. You can change out this address or even send it to multiple people. You could customize the subject line if you wanted to, and then you can select which fields from the form are included in the email message. You can do that by clicking this icon, and I just want to make sure that we are getting all the fields. So there's name, there's email, there's select the service you're interested in, and whether or not they're a current patient or a new patient. That works. Once those options are good, I'll click Done. And this last thing we have here is the success message. This is what's displayed to your customer after they hit that submit button on your contact form. There's a default message in here, but of course you can update this to say whatever you want. In my case, I'm not sending a confirmation email, so I'm going to get rid of that. And form submitted successfully sounds pretty much like default language, so I would encourage you to update this to something that sounds a little more personal. Okay, so we'll click Done and Publish. I'm going to close out of this, and let's head back to our contact page. Using my list view, I'm going to select this unsupported block and remove that. And I'm going to click to bring up the block inserter panel, type in Ninja form. And if I had multiple forms, I could select one, but in this case, I just have the one. And this says contact me instead of just contact. So let me show you where you can change that. If we head back to our Ninja Forms dashboard, click the gear icon to edit this particular form. To change this title, I can click Advanced, Display Settings, and let's just say Contact Us. You could also opt to not even show the form title. I'll click Done, Republish, and let's head back to our contact page. And since this contact form is a little bit longer here than the information in our left column, we can change the alignment on that. There we go. That looks better. Again, I won't make you watch as I type in all the information for my vet clinic, but there is one more block I want to show you that's fantastic for a contact page. I'll say Insert Before, click the plus button, and WordPress comes with a Google Map block out of the box, which is pretty nifty. Just type in your business's address, select the zoom level, how tall you want the map to be, etc., and it'll appear right there on your contact page with driving directions. So with our map in place and our contact form, I'm going to click Publish on this page and check it out. When it comes to creating a blog for your site, or maybe you want to call it news or articles, but same idea, it's a way to show your post. There are two ways to go about it, and I'll show you both. So the first method is what I'll call traditional. And to do that, I'm going to create a new page. I'll call it blog traditional. And let's click publish. Now when I view the page, as expected, there's nothing there. But if we head to the customizer and go to homepage settings, where earlier we selected the page that we wanted to use as our homepage, we can use the same spot to say which page we want to use for our post. And just like that, here we have a list of our blog post. Now Astra, like most themes, has some options for how the blog is structured. We can do a handful of things like change the ordering of the featured image in the title. We could hide the comments and the author, a few things, but in general, I'm fairly limited here. For instance, if I wanted to do a grid layout, I'd need to custom code it, but that's the traditional way. So let's get out of here. And oops, let's throw this page in the trash. Okay. Now the starter templates I used came with a blog, and this looks really sharp, but I don't want to use that. I'd like to create one from scratch with you in case you're not using starter templates or this theme. So we'll move that to trash. And now let's create a new page. We'll call this one blog. And we're going to use a block called the post list block. This lets us choose a variation to start with, and I'm going to do this image, date, and title. There we go. That pulls in our post, and then with a click of the button, I can change that from list view to a grid view, which is really cool. I can also select how many items I want to show, let's say 6. If we open up our block settings panel, we can even choose how many columns we'd like this to be. I'll keep it here. I think that looks nice. And then, as with any block, you can do things like edit the font sizes, the colors, etc. So let's make this title a little smaller. And we could rearrange the photos in relationship to the post title just by dragging and dropping. But I actually liked it where it is, so I'm going to leave that there. And let's click publish. We'll take a look. And this is not how we were expecting things to look. And this, my friends, happens frequently in the world of web development. You click something thinking it'll look a certain way, and it does not. But let's go back and edit this page and see if we can troubleshoot it together. To start, I'm going to head to my Astra settings. Now, if you don't see the Astra settings in your toolbar, click this ellipsis. Well, and that's assuming you're using the Astra theme. Click the options ellipsis here and click Astra settings. Here I can see for our content layout, we are using whatever was in the customizer for both the content and the sidebar. I'm going to leave that as for just a moment. And let's head back. We know from that starter template that that blog can look perfect. So what's the deal? Let's restore this. And we'll go edit that to take a peek and see what they're doing. Okay, so in their Astra settings, they've got full width contained and no sidebar selected. Okay, let's try that. So if we go back to our blog page, we'll change our content layout to full width and our sidebar to no sidebar. Now, if we update that, that looks much better. So sometimes you just have to play around with things to get them to look like how you expect. And if we weren't able to troubleshoot this as quickly, we might have had to turn to the documentation. But hey, that's what theme documentation and ultimately support is there for if you need help figuring out how to accomplish something. So we'll head back to our pages and let's delete that blog page that we ended up not using. And with that, we've now created an attractive blog page for our site. Navigation plays an extremely important role in your site. That may sound kind of obvious, but think of the last time that you were on a website trying to find some information and it just felt like you had to dig for it because it wasn't obvious where to go. That's called a bad user experience. Your goal is to make it easier on your customers by clearly pointing them to the information they need. And the first way you do that is with a good menu. So you'll notice I've already got a navigation menu here. I didn't actually create that. The theme automatically took all the top level pages I had when I installed the theme, and it created this menu out of it. And while that's a handy starting point, it's not complete. So I'm going to create a custom menu, and I'll show you how. So if I head back to my admin, I'll go to Appearance and Menus. Now here is the default menu that was added, and it's showing that this blog link is invalid, and that's because I threw that in the trash in the previous lesson. So we'll actually just go ahead and delete this menu altogether and create a new one. We can call it Main Menu. Create, and from here I can see all the pages, posts, etc. on my site and add them to the menu. Okay, so here I've got my services, and I want to nest my services as sub-menu items. And we can rearrange these just by dragging and dropping. And earlier in the course, I mentioned wanting to highlight dental care, so I'm actually going to drag that to the top of my services list. I'll put About, above Services, and now all we're missing is a link to our home page. Add that, and I think we're pretty good. And once you've created it, the last thing you need to do is actually say where you're going to display it on your site. And in this case, it's going to be the primary menu location. So I'll save that. Let's go look at our site. And there it is. Awesome. Now you may remember from earlier, this contact button was added via the customizer under the header builder. Here we've got the site title and logo. Here's our menu, and then here's that button. Now, in this case, I want to make sure that we are linking properly to our contact page. And I'm pretty sure the slug for that was just contact, but let's check it and see. If we go back to our pages, contact, quick edit, and yep, there's the slug, contact. So now if we go view our site, we should have this menu working and the contact page loading. There it is. Perfect. Looks like we're rocking some solid navigation. Most small businesses want to show up in search results. In this lesson, I'll share a few tips to help with your discoverability. If you head to your WordPress admin and go to Settings, Reading, you'll see an option here for Search Engine Visibility. Once your site is launched and ready for visitors, you want to make sure this checkbox is unchecked. While that's no guarantee of a good listing, you want to make sure that you're not actively discouraging search engines from indexing your site. Another thing you can do is to create a business profile with Google. It's free to do and gives searchers information about your business, things like your address, your phone number, your hours, etc., all things that your customers would find really valuable. This is a great tool and likely one you've used yourself when searching online. Even though WordPress is free software, there are still costs associated with running a website. Those costs include startup expenses as well as ongoing costs. One cost I never want you to underestimate is that of your time. As a small business owner, that's your most precious resource. Other than time, what other expenses can you expect? Well, the first will be that of your domain name. Unless you've chosen a highly sought-after name, this is typically a minimal expense, but it's an expense nonetheless. Note that domain names are registered in terms of years. You may choose to re-up your registration each year or pay for multiple years in advance just so you don't have to worry about it. Next up is the cost of your web host. There are web hosts out there for every budget, but I caution you not to default to a budget host. If your site is business critical, and by that I mean that it's directly tied to your revenue, then consider a host that can guarantee you at least 99.95% uptime. The next cost to factor in is that of ongoing site maintenance. You may choose to do this yourself, or you may choose to outsource this to a professional. At a minimum, it'll cost you time to do it yourself, or you'll be paying money to hire it out. Finally, you may opt to hire professional services for your site. That could include design or development, or maybe marketing services or paid promotions. If you decide to hire a professional, I'd suggest asking around for recommendations. And once you've found a vendor, it's totally okay to ask them for references. Now, I'm not putting any specific numbers with these costs, as each can vary tremendously. That said, I want you to have an idea of the factors that go into your website so that you can budget accordingly. Even though I'm using the word cost, I really want you to think of your website as an investment that helps drive revenue and value for your business. Earlier in this course, I set out the specific goals and requirements for this site. Now that the site is pretty much done, this is the time to go back to our initial planning and make sure that the site we've built is a match for what we originally wanted. Do keep in mind that sometimes in the course of development, things can shift a bit. You might think of something you want that didn't cross your mind earlier, or you may have set a requirement that no longer needs to be a priority. But overall, your site should match with the majority of your goals. But note that if a few things have changed a little, that's okay. That's really the point of this step. So the goals that we originally set out to accomplish were to have a clear call to action for new patients, to draw attention to the new dental care offering, and to highlight the expertise of the clinic. Finally, we further defined our site requirements. We wanted a friendly, professional design. We wanted to make sure it was obvious how to contact the business. We wanted to display testimonials. And it was important to have a responsive and accessible site using a block-based theme. So let's take a look at our site and see how we stack up. The first thing I notice is our overall design. I think it reflects the brand via use of colors and adds warmth through photos. We also have a clear call to action in our heading here, inviting new patients to schedule an appointment. And on our homepage here, we have also got some testimonials. Now, I did want to highlight the new dental care offering, and other than putting it at the top of my services list, I really haven't done that. Let's do a couple of things. First, let's go to the dental care page and add a button inviting visitors to schedule a cleaning. So we'll click Edit Page. And then at the bottom of the page, let's insert a new button block. Make sure this links up to our contact page. And let's center that button. There we go. Perfect. So next, let's go back to our home page and add another call to action. We'll go Edit Page. Let's figure out where we want to put our call to action. We'll put it right here above the blog post. And I'm going to use one of those Astra starter patterns. I'm going to look at the call to action patterns, and we'll drop in this one. We can customize it. We'll link it to our contact page. Instead of our contact page, let's link this to the dental care page, and we'll change the text of the button to say, Learn More. Oops, and that's further up on the page than I intended, so let's go back. And this time I'll use the list view. Okay, so here is our group, that's our CTA. And I'll just use these down arrows. There we go. We've got it sandwiched between our testimonials and our blog posts. And let's look at that. There we go. Now, a really important requirement was that the site be accessible and responsive. Now, both Firefox and Chrome have a built-in mobile emulator you can use. Just right-click anywhere on the screen and click Inspect. From there, you can select the mobile emulator, and that's indicated by the mobile icon here. So when we click this, we can see our site in a different screen size. Very cool. So far, it looks like our images and text are scaling down appropriately for here. Now, if we widen it up a bit to see more of a tablet size, I don't actually love the way this image is interacting with the text here. So let's see if we can do something about that. I'm going to get out of this mode. I'll edit the page. And let's use the list view. Let's get rid of this image right here and actually get rid of that column. So we go to just a 2-column list. But we do want those 2 columns to take up the whole width. So I'll say the first column is going to be 50%. And the second column is also 50%. There we go. Okay, and I will go ahead and add a photo back in, but we'll do that above these columns. There we go. I'll add this one. So if I update that and take a look, oh, let's see if we can center our image. Oh yeah, that looks better. Okay, let's double check it on mobile. So inspect, click the mobile device. And yeah, I think that looks a lot better. And just to confirm, our mobile menu is also working. Let's click through a couple of pages. Perfect. All right, so all these things considered, it looks like the site I've built here is now a match for what I set out to do. If you need to go back and make some tweaks to your site, now's the time to do it. If you've been following along with this course since the beginning, you might now have a fully functional small business site set up on your web host. Before you tell the world about your site, there's a couple of things I'd want you to do first. I call this a pre-launch checklist. For starters, you're going to want to click through every single page of your site and every link that you find, just to make sure that it works as expected. This is especially important if you've changed your domain at any point in the development process. For instance, maybe you started developing at a staging URL provided by your web host and then switched to your company's custom domain. That has the potential to mess up links, so you want to check them. You could also use a plugin like Broken Link Checker to help out with this process, but beware that you'd want to deactivate and delete this plugin as soon as you're finished using it. It will absolutely slow down your site while it's running. After you've been through all your links, you want to make sure that any forms work. For instance, go to your contact page, fill out the form, see that it works as expected, and then double check that you receive an email notification. If you confirm forms are working properly, but you're not getting notifications, you may need to use a plugin like WP Mail SMTP to help with deliverability. You can reach out to your web host for support as well. Next, if you haven't done this already, we want to encourage search engines to index our site. So if we go to Settings, Reading, we'll see Search Engine Visibility, and just make sure that box is not checked. Also, if you've been running any maintenance mode plugins or coming soon plugins, you'll want to deactivate those so that if someone visits your domain, they can actually see your site. And we talked about this earlier, but don't forget to check how your site looks in mobile devices. You want to see how it's going to look in real life on your phone and on a tablet. You can ask friends and family to click around on your site and help out with this quality assurance process too. With each of these things done and confidence that your site looks good, you're now ready to share your site with the world. Once your small business site is out on the web, it's a good idea to add in a couple of extra security layers inside WordPress. That's because even though WordPress is about as secure as you can get when it comes to content management systems, there are still ways that people can use to get into your site and do bad things. In this lesson, we'll add 2 plugins to your site to help harden it from attack. Of course, you could go to the WordPress plugin directory, but I'm going to go straight to my site and head to Plugins, Add New. The first plugin we want will protect your site from the majority of comment spam, and that's one of the most common and prevalent things that you'll find on the web. Anytime you set up a site with comments enabled, you inevitably get tons of comment spam, advertising all sorts of things that you don't want advertised on your site. Now, Akismet here is by far the superior plugin when it comes to comment spam. However, there is a nominal cost associated with that service. I think it's worth it, but in the spirit of only using freely available plugins in this course, I'm going to recommend Anti-Spam Bee. While it's not quite as thorough as Akismet, it will stop the majority of spam from getting through. So let's go ahead and install it and activate it. I'll go to the settings and you can see that there are various configuration options. There's a link to the manual here if you want to learn more about these options. Otherwise, you can just leave it to the default settings. So that's the first plugin. The second plugin I want to show you prevents people from using brute force attacks to gain access to the backend of your site. This is Limited Login Attempts Reloaded, and this plugin does exactly what it sounds like. Once you install it and activate it, this plugin will work on the login page for your WordPress site. So if you were to go into your WordPress site and log in, nothing will happen. You'll just log in and everything will work normally. However, when a computer or a bot goes to your WordPress site and tries to guess out your password, it'll try to do that hundreds of thousands of times, and eventually the algorithm will probably guess your password and get in. So what this plugin does is limit the number of times anyone can try logging into your site. Under the Limit Login Attempts menu item, you can go in and modify settings as needed. However, I would recommend just leaving them at their default. So by adding Anti-Spam Bee and Limit Login Attempt Reloaded to your site, you've added an extra level of security to your site that will prevent the most common forms of attack. Part of your responsibility as a website owner is to keep your site healthy. Just like a car needs ongoing maintenance, so will your website. So just because you finished the initial project of launching your site, it doesn't mean that the work ends there. In this lesson, I'd like to share some tips for keeping your site healthy and running safe and smoothly. First, use strong passwords for your login. At the very least, use a combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. On that note, never share your password. If you've engaged someone to help with your site, create a user account just for them. And that brings me to the next step, which is to regularly remove unneeded users from your site. If you've added users here or there to help with something, make sure you're deleting those users that no longer need access. If you're experimenting with different themes and plugins, you may have grown quite a collection of them on your site. Not only do these add clutter to your site admin, but they can pose security risk when left untouched. Which brings me to my final point, and that is to keep WordPress core and all themes and plugins up to date. Outdated software is a huge opportunity for hackers. WordPress and theme and plugin authors are continually rolling out updates, not just for feature enhancements, but also for security patches. Now, when it comes to these maintenance tasks or even trying out new plugins, you don't want to risk taking your website down in the event that an error occurs. To guard against this, I recommend using a staging site. A staging site is simply a copy of your live site, a sort of playground where you can make changes and test things out. If everything goes smoothly in staging, then you know it's safe to proceed on your live site. Next, before making changes on your live site, I highly recommend making a complete backup of your site. A good web host will automatically make routine backups of your site. Make sure you know where to find those backups in your hosting account and know how to initiate a backup of your own. In the event that something goes wrong, you may need to restore your site from a backup. My favorite web hosts offer a one-click restore from backup feature. This has saved my hide on many occasions when I didn't take my own advice of using a staging site and blew something up. A one-click restore will have your site up and running again in a matter of minutes. Your website is a living thing, and it exists to serve your business. Always remember that you can go back at any time to change your content, experiment with new features, or take away anything that's not working.